guys wouldn't mind announcing your name before the question,
Okay.
so we a name to a face. We'll start with Vinny over here on the left.
Vinny Bocciero with the Review Journal. Curious, this is the first time that you guys are working a draft together, and you'll get to the draft room eventually. What's the process of building a consensus on the decisions that you guys are gonna ultimately make? And you know, everyone wants to know if there is a tie or if there isn't a consensus, who has ultimate deciding making powers?
What I would say about that is we don't work it out. That's all you need to know. We don't work it out. We're dedicated to doing that, and we will have it will be consensus on it.
And well, the guys that we don't have a consensus on, we probably won't take, from my experience too. So they're probably not right for the Raiders and for us. To your other question though, I mean, it's been an awesome experience so far. Lots of great communication, thoughts, sharing ideas, different perspectives. I pride myself in being an open-minded person. I've gotten to know Coach really well. He's certainly an open-minded person, and you know, there's no personal feelings in this or anything like that. We both have our thoughts and our experiences, but I think the cool thing is that we share a lot of things in common about what we're looking for in players and who we want to add to this organization, which has made us a pretty good team so far.
I know this is a voluntary portion of off-season workouts, but Colton Miller hasn't reported yet, and it's reported that he's seeking the new contract. Is there any interest from you guys in terms of starting negotiations, or are you kind of holding off on that stuff for now?
I was just going to give you our answer. It's going to be this going forward. We're not going to discuss contracts publicly, and this is certainly a voluntary part of the off-season program. So, you know, guys are free to come and go as they please.
For both of you, Hondo, Carpenter, Vanessa, I'm curious, each draft has a different flavor. Sometimes they're line deep, sometimes running back deep. But for you guys, and just in generalities, what stands out to you about this 2025 draft?
There's a lot of really good players. Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to get into the depth of each of our position groups on the board. People are going to start breaking that down and think that we have a tell. I think, you know, we just came from the draft room actually, and the way that it looks right now, we're excited about the players at a lot of different positions, and I think the cool thing is they match up with some of where Coach and I think that this team can get better, and that makes us feel good because it feels like we can get good players across the board that are going to help our team this year and in years to come as well.
Kevin Bowling at Fox 5. Can you talk about your philosophy in terms of drafting with the best player available versus need? And if it comes down throughout the weekend that two guys are graded out pretty similarly, and one's in need and one's in a position and maybe isn't in need, is that going to weigh things one way or the other?
Okay, he's tapping me in on this one. Look, this is the age-old question, right? Are we doing need or are we doing best player available? And my answer would be that it's a combination of both. Yes. We're going to make the best decision for the Raiders, and certainly we have to take into mind places that we feel like we're not as deep at certain positions, and also we have opportunities to add really good players too, whether we think we need that player or not. You know, my experience kind of is two things. If you start forcing players because you need them, you end up regretting that, and you also can't have enough good players in certain positions too. So sometimes what isn't feel like a need right now becomes a need after one or two injuries during the season, and then you're thankful you took this really good player. So, you know, at the end of the day, we're going to kind of combine all that along with character and injury data, and we're going to have a cool stack set up, and we're going to pick the best player available for the Raiders whenever we're up to pick.
Case Kiefer, Las Vegas Sun. John, I think one of the other times you talked to us, you talked about the importance of understanding the value of positions, part of your philosophy going into a draft. How fluid is that year to year based on what's going on in the NFL, or how much is that set in place based on your past?
Well, I have my biases, I think, in positions that I like. I know he does too, and they have to end up matching up pretty well. Listen, I think we all have an idea of how we feel like the best to build a football team and where you start and what you do and where you go from there, but you have to take into account who you have on your team and are they going to be here, you know, 2 or 3 years down the line. You know, there's no easy answer to that question. I don't think there are more, you know, I mean, there's players that skill positions that touch the ball every play, and you have to value that in, but if you can't protect the quarterback or affect the quarterback, then they don't really get a chance to make plays on it either. So, you know, there's a million different ways to do it, which is why I think it's so interesting. So many people enjoy it, and there's a lot of ways to do it.
Yeah, we certainly want to be subjective and, you know, and weigh it all the way to the end in the moment that we have to make our pick, and use all of the thoughts. You know, we're trying to incorporate all of the wisdom we can muster, you know, from all of our peeps that are working with us. We got a ton of information coming in and experience and all of that. So I don't know that we would ever say, you know, it's all this, it's all that, at any time. We wanna be wide open as much as possible and make great decisions.
Alex Eshelman with KTV Channel 13. What's the biggest commonality that you both share in terms of your approach to the draft every year?
We love
When you're
the
looking
Raiders.
at players.
Yeah, we love the Raiders. What I'm seeing from John is really his depth of commitment to the people that we choose, and the makeup of the person, and the character, and certainly the competitiveness of the guys, the hunger that they bring. That's something that we both cherish, and so we come from a real connected spot in that regard. So in every choice that we make, every decision we're talking about, it always comes up. You know, what kind of guy is this guy? You know, what can we expect? How can we complement our mentality? Right now, we're building this team, and so much of that comes from the character and the attitude and the makeup of the people. And so as we draft all the way throughout the rounds, and that's going to be a huge factor in all of our decisions. And we're really connected in our thinking in that regard. So I know we both feel very comfortable about going into this because we know we have that kind of baseline that we're starting from. So
I would just add to that too, just the competitiveness, it's the person, but when I think about the kind of player that we need to bring to this program to give to the coaches and what I've seen from Coach and his staff already, there needs to be a passion and a competitive drive that is gonna be paramount to people's success in this. And if they don't have it, then they won't last you very long, in my opinion, from what I've seen and what I know. And we have to demand that, because otherwise we're not doing our jobs as scouts and as a personnel department very well, because we're setting them up for failure. Because I don't think it's fair to ask Coach and all his staff to try to pull the competitiveness out of them every day. The players have to be willing to give it, and then it can be, you know, exponentially grown over time.
Adam Hill, Las Vegas Review Journal. I just want to follow up on that, John. Ashton Jeanty actually said in an interview the other day that he thought you guys were looking at character more than maybe even other teams were, and that you guys valued that. I guess, is that what maybe the art of scouting now, where everybody knows the same numbers, everybody has all the same, you know, information on guys, everybody has the same tape, but that's the art of maybe learning a guy?
I think there is an instinct and a nuance to it for sure, and every year I go, you know, through another draft process between the combine interviews and the player interviews and the top 30s and all of that. I feel more convicted and confident in knowing who that person is sitting across from me, even if it's only a 15 or 20-minute meeting. And again, I've talked about it before in Tampa, where I felt like we got really good was we matched the quality tape up with the quality person. And whether or not other people think that we drafted guys a little bit too high, I think the proof was in the pudding that those are the guys that we built that program on, and I think it really is going to stand up here too, because we're demanding it. And you know, Coach just talked about it, and we will be, our fate will be the kind of person that we bring to this organization, from coaches to scouts to players. And I think we're silly if we don't demand that there's a high level of commitment to football and being a good person to go along with that. So
Love of the game.
love of the game. I don't think it's too hard to ask those two things. You just got to know where to look and how to find it.
Edwards, Las Vegas Raiders. On the back end of that question, Ashton Jeanty, a couple of prospects were talking about the top 30 visits and kind of the things that you did outside of the building in terms of kind of gauging, you know, doing top golf and things like that. Do you think things like that are important to kind of also gauge someone's personality for your drafting, but also gauge the competitive spirit?
Well, you know, I would say that the more situations that we can put guys in, and the more opportunity we have to see them in different lights and all, is high value. And so, you know, we tried to be real creative with that thought while they were here, and in the questions that we ask, and we're digging, you know, at them to reveal, and so that we can just get enough info to have the kind of gauge that we feel really good about it. Sometimes you feel better about some guys than others, and some of it has to do with the openness of the player. You know, we try to give them an atmosphere where they feel comfortable, and so that they'll feel free and allow a little bit of vulnerability to be shown, you know, and all that. So it's hugely important that we get at the answers. We don't always get them, but we're digging for them.
In the modern NFL, I know it's become kind of looked down upon to take running backs high in the draft, but I think we've seen Ashton Jeanty get talked about in that top 10 by pretty much everybody who's putting together mock drafts. What do you think about him in particular makes him so special to where he might be warranted one of those picks?
I'm going to be careful about talking about any specific player, but you know, more broadly to the running back question, I mean, we just saw Saquon Barkley just change the Eagles in one year. Now they had a great team around him, and you know, it was adding an elite player. And I think when you sit where we sit, I mean, the idea is to add elite players at any position. And I don't try to devalue any certain position. I mean, there's times in games where there's nobody you'd rather have than the best kicker in the league too, right? I mean, in that moment, so. There's certain ways to build a team, and I don't know where we got to a place where we don't feel like running backs are valued. I come from the University of Michigan, to my core, and these guys are certainly really valued there, so it's hard for me to get away from that.
We're kind of at a new horizon real quick with NIL, and we're a few years into it now. Have you guys noticed any kind of a change in demeanor in the players? And people talked about, well, there's gonna be a sense of entitlement because they've already been paid. Have you guys picked up on it? Does it make it easier or harder to gauge some of the things that you guys?
What I would say is that we are looking for that factor, you know, and trying to uncover the factor if it does exist. It's only natural to think that it would change. So, you know, guys know that they can go from one school to the next, and depending on how much they're offered and all that kind of stuff. That wasn't happening. You know, that was not part of the equation. So it's certainly going to have an effect. I think more so as we go further into this, when you think about freshmen and sophomore kids in high school getting offered deals, which is happening. That's happening. If you can, I mean, you might think we're stretching. That's the real deal. Chip Kelly was out on the road, you know, recruiting guys for Ohio State, and he was talking to kids who were freshmen and sophomores. And so that accumulative effect of being involved in that kind of decision making in that kind of world has to have an effect at some point. And guys staying in school because they know that they can get paid, you know, in that senior year pretty well, and they don't take a chance of going to the draft. You know, that's just wasn't the way the mentality was built. So we have to be very open and investigative to figure this out and see what the factor is. I don't really like it, you know, because for these guys, for these young kids coming up, that they have to deal with all this stuff, but it's real, and so they do, and so we'll find out the effect of it, you know, in time. But we certainly, I know I'm totally tuned into it and trying to listen for it, you know, and see it.
Carter, with the Rivers, I'm curious, if you guys do elect to take a player at 6, there's a lot of different directions you can go. Some of that is also gonna be dictated on what happens ahead of you. How do you approach those conversations in draft meetings about trying to plan for all the different combinations of picks and moves that can happen ahead, and then eventually taking that player?
Well, when you're picking 6, you only gotta figure out 5 different combinations or players that could possibly go, and, you know, I mean, our pro department up there right now with Ben and Jordan and Jordy's doing a great job of tracking visits and private workouts and who's at pro days to try to, you know, figure out, you know, kind of where these teams might go to help you prepare. But at the same time, that's a lot of wasted energy to me, because we have, at the end of the day, I mean, we have no idea what these teams are going to do. We have a sense, but we're guessing. And I think our focus, Coach and I's focus, is more on the Raiders, and like, are we comfortable with the stack of players that are there at 6? Would we trade out? Would we trade up? Would we just stay and pick? What does that look like? You know, like, if there's 1 or 2 guys there that we love, we'll probably just stay and pick. If there's a guy that falls that we don't expect to fall, maybe we go get him. Or maybe we've got a group of players we feel comfortable with a little bit further back, and so we'd love to gather more trade assets and, you know, have more darts to throw at the dartboard here, so to speak.
And that covered all the options, right?
Yeah, I know. Thank you, I'm learning from this guy. So, again, we're focused really on us at this point. You know, the teams in front of us are gonna do what they can do, we've got no control over that, and we better be ready to pick when we're up at 6.
Q Myers, Raider Nation Radio 920. With the addition of Geno and the extension of Follow, how do you approach the quarterback position as it pertains to the draft?
Remain open-minded, and anybody that can help us at that position in particular is gonna be, you know, up for consideration. I think you guys have all done your investigative journalism well enough to know that we brought some quarterbacks in, and that wasn't by accident by any means. And we remain open to the most important position in sports to get right, and we're super excited to have Geno here, and we continue to expect him to be here for a while, but you can't have too many of those guys.
Zinch event, SI John, just kind of to that point, can you talk a little bit about how your moves in free agency added flexibility to what you can do in the draft?
Yeah, I mean, I think you approach free agency from a team building aspect, and we tried to hit certain spots where we felt like maybe we were a little bit light with good value contracts. We had great conversations. I know Coach and the defensive staff, because it was a pretty big focal point in free agency was the defense. And I hope and I think it alleviated needs to chase certain things, so we can feel more convicted to just add the best player for the Raiders and not just fill holes. that doesn't mean that we still don't have some that we need to get better at, we certainly do, and that won't change year to year, we'll always feel like that, but, the team building exercises, you know, and we try to approach free agency a little bit with like, all right, if we can get these guys here, maybe the draft is a little bit stronger at these positions, and we can build the team that way too, so, you know, we've been excited about what the guys who have been here have done so far too, so that helps.
For all of us who can't be in the war room with you, what is your guys' go-to drink, snack, meal during draft day?
I'm going wild for Mountain Dew, make sure that I'm caffeined up. You know, whatever's handy.
Whatever Ricky and Angie serve will eat, and try to stick to water, don't drink your calories.
Sticking to the war room
No
theme.
Mountain Dew for me.
I bet.
Sticking with the war room theme, will you have all your assistant coaches in there, all your scouts, will Tom Brady be in there? How do you gonna set up your war room, John?
You know, obviously, I like having the scouts in there. They've put in so much work throughout the year. I've been places where the group isn't in there, and it can be tough on morale. So it's a smaller room than I think we wish it was, when you start putting that amount of people in there too. But it's a working environment too, and so we have to be cognizant of the fact that there's gotta be lots of communication. We can't just say it's not a party. It's probably not as exciting as everybody in here thinks it might be. Obviously, when we start approaching being on the clock, when we're on the clock, you know, there's kind of a hush and an excitement that falls over the group. But you know, in terms of what ownership is going to be here, I'm not sure on that yet. Certainly, if they want to seat at the table, they'll get a seat at the table on the team.
There'll be chairs.
We'll be dynamic and fluid in that aspect too. But you know, Coach and I will be sitting next to each other and coordinating all the way through.
Paul Gutierrez here from Raiders.com. That's not a string. That was cool. John, after decades of paying dues, and now you're sitting in the driver's seat, how
Just
jacked
2
are you?
decades.
Yeah, 2 decades.
Made that sound like I was like 50 years old.
You're in the seat now.
We're gonna age.
How excited are you to be there? And Pete, what vibe is he putting off?
I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say that this wasn't a dream come true. It certainly is. But the gravity of getting the picks right and having a great process and making sure that we communicate is really more important to me than anything else. And you know, I pride myself on being a team player. I don't think that this is about me at all. This is about the Raiders and the group of us people upstairs that want to put the best football team together for Raider Nation and for Mark Davis and all of the ownership group. And that's really my focal point. And added bonus to have Coach here with me, who's excelled at this for a long time. I mean, I marveled at their drafts in Seattle for years to come, and all the past years, all those decades when I was paying my dues, I was marveling at what Coach was doing. So anyway, there's a wealth of knowledge, and I'm just excited for the opportunity for the group of us upstairs. There's so many people that have put so much work in, and you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge all of them. But you know, that's really my focal point.
Yeah, there's no signs that this is John's first go around. It doesn't feel like that at all. He's gained so much from the people he's worked with. I'm sure they've given him a latitude, and they've utilized his powers and his strengths, because you can just tell he's very comfortable with the process. That doesn't mean that we don't, as we're growing together, there'll be things that we tweak along the way. But I couldn't be more confident in where he's coming from. And I think it's because philosophically we're so connected. You know, we're very fortunate that they put us together to do this, and so that's you know, knowing where you come from and who you are is really, really valuable. And particularly when you're faced with difficult answers, challenges, questions, and things like that, you know, this is not any time have I felt like, oh gosh, we're so young, we're so naive, we're so whatever. We're in like that, so we're ready to go.
John, you had mentioned sticking or picking or trading. Do you sense any appetite behind you for teams that might want to jump up and get somebody that they're looking?
Well,
without giving anything away.
Yeah.
We can go back to Hugh's question.
Yeah. Well, if we stay, we'll pick this guy. Otherwise, we'd love to trade out. I mean, we'll consider all options. I mean, I'd love. We've got 9 picks, which is great. I'd be maybe more motivated to move out if we had 4, but we have 9. But listen, if somebody wants to come offer us something great, you know, we're going to consider everything too, and we certainly would be open to that.
Pete,
If you're asking, my phone hasn't rung yet, but it's only Friday, so.
John, sorry, along those lines, like, do you kind of get the sense, did you start, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, it's okay, you jumped over him, all right, you win.
Along those same lines, like, do you get the sense there is gonna be a lot of movement just in general, not from you guys, like, is there a lot of teams that you feel might move, and then the other part is logistically, like, is it the general managers communicating, is it staff communicating, like, how does that kind of work, and how different is the draft night if teams are calling you, and then you're actually on the phone and during that process?
I have the sense that maybe I think the top of two feels more like there could be some action up there. But listen, it only takes one team to get a run on a certain position started, and then everybody else goes, oh, well, we want one of those guys, we better go. And so the draft remains wildly unpredictable, which is why everybody loves it. And the staffs that are dynamic and navigate the changing landscape the best usually do the best. And you know, it's our first go around together, but I feel confident in the process we have up top with the people that are helping and going to assist. We've got a lot of people that are they know what to do, they know what's expected of them, they know how to communicate the trade chart value, the real-time value of trades. You know, is this a buyer's market, is it a seller's market? I mean, we're gonna get this process more ironed out as we go forward. But you know, we had a trade meeting this morning that Coach and I were a part of, and it was really cool to the different technologies they have and the thought processes that go into it. And I've tried to steer as many of the trade calls to other people so I can sit there and think and communicate with him. But if your phone rings and somebody wants the pick or wants to move out, be ready to call. So we'll just take it all as it comes.
Pete,
Ask it by Hondo Havlicek.
with your less than John's decades, I'm just curious, what is the biggest lesson you've learned, or maybe thing about the draft that's maybe you've changed your opinion on?
Overtrying is really a problem. You know, you try too hard to make something happen that maybe isn't all justified. You know, and that comes from wanting to fill holes, fill voids, and you overreach. And we don't want to do that. We want to be very composed about the decision making and not get all enamored with one person that's going to make the difference in the draft and all of that. And we'd rather go about it in a very deliberate way and make our choices very clear and not get whacked out about any choice in any direction.
Hey, John.
Go ahead.
The draft is a culmination of years and years of information gathering process. For these next couple of days, what do you want to prioritize with your staff? What are you guys going to be focused on as you put the finishing touches on that process?
I think that we feel pretty good about the players and where they're at on the board right now, and Coach and I will continue to tinker as we kind of whittle down here to the players that we would consider at certain spots. But I think the thing that we want to plan for is some of the strategy. You know, who would we just stay and pick? Who would be willing to move out for, but on a premium? Who would be willing to move out for, just let's get out. We feel like the value is further down the board. You can't predict all those different things, but I think if you've got kind of a set idea of how you want to do it, then you usually eliminate some mistakes and you can kind of capitalize on some advantage or some potential quality moves there. I always think back to the trade when we traded out of 7 to 12 with the Bills, and I love the strategy of it. We had Vita Vea. We were going to pick Vita Vea at 7, and we had ironed everything out in advance. Turns out we should have stuck and probably picked Josh Allen, but we ended up with Brady, so it worked out okay. But we ended up betting the whole thing out ahead of time and realizing, like, if it was Vita, we would trade, but we would demand a premium, and there's probably a team coming for a quarterback, right? We had talked through all the scenarios, and so we moved from 7 to 12 and got 2 second-round picks that turned into MJ Stewart and Carlton Davis, who ended up being a great player for us. So that strategy is, I think, what we want to work on, and as long as Coach and I are like in lockstep with, like, hey, doesn't matter who calls, we're picking. Doesn't matter what they offer, or let's ride back 10 picks and see who's there. But because we're getting good value, we're gonna try to figure out those as best we can.
We're gonna wrap up the queue.
I know it takes a couple of seasons to actually know the grade on a draft class, but is there a sense that you can get when the draft is over? Yeah, feels like we did a really good job. We did and accomplished what we wanted to get accomplished.
Yeah, I think certainly that's the case. You can feel like we have thoughts right now that things we'd like to get done, and if those things go bang, 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 and we're feeling really good about it, we're gonna be happy with the process. But then the proof is in, over time, and so we recognize that. But we'll be celebrating, when this happens, and be excited about it because of the process is such a challenge and it's so much fun for us too, and all of the people involved. We'll enjoy the heck out of it, and then we'll see what happens, and we'll try to make it come to life and be really strong.
there's usually 32 teams that feel really good about their draft.
Right.
When we get the right kind of people in here, I think you can feel pretty confident you did a good job. So we're shooting for that this year.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks,
Hey,
guys.